Alright, everyone, welcome to the design class. Are we good to go? Um, can I see in the comment section or in the feedback section if you know if you're online, if you can hear me, just respond with an emoji or something. If we're good to go, you can respond with an emoji. We'll be taking the design class, Introduction to Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator. Um, So I'll give people time to come back into the class. We're sorry for the delay. We just had few we just had few difficulties in the network, but we are back. So if you're back with us, please just respond with an emoji. Daniel, okay, welcome Quadri. Um, Olua Tobiloba. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm a small boy. Thank you. I'm a young man, no Agba. So just in case. Um, all right. So I'll still be giving people time. Awesome. People are joining in. Okay. Keep responding with emojis. Yeah, I love that dab. Yeah. Always responding with a YouTube icon. All right. There's a reason we'll get to that soon. There's a reason why I want everybody to respond with emojis. So if you're back online, please just respond with your favorite emoji. I'm an old young man. All right. Thank you. Thank you for correcting me, Tomide. Hopefully I pronounced it well. Okay. Um, all right. Let's get started then. So welcome to class, everyone. Um, I'm Aluya Honorio there. I'm a designer. Um, let's just leave it at that. So I'll be taking you on Illustrator, Introduction to Illustrator. I would also be, alongside my good friend Timmy, would also be going around the rudiments and introduction to illustration. So let's just get started to Illustrator. Now, my other colleague, Toby, he talked about Photoshop. So now I'll be talking about Illustrator. Um, so now there are two key differences that differentiates both of them, because you'll be wondering, okay, why am I learning Photoshop? Why am I learning Illustrator at the same time? Do you understand? Your favorite emojis on WhatsApp, all right. I'm sure you can find a way to import it to YouTube. I mean, it's still the same library. All right, um, so now you might be wondering, what's the difference between these two guys? Like, I should just learn Photoshop and just move on with Illustrator instead, or leave Illustrator out of the picture. Truth be told, the introduction to illustration, do you understand? You can use either Photoshop or you can use Illustrator. You get, the pick is yours. But you need to understand why, or cases when where you need to use Illustrator, where you need to use Adobe Photoshop. Do you understand? So you don't get to make mistakes, or you get to do work over and over and over again. So now here are some key things we'll be going over in this class. We'll be going over what a raster and vector image, or raster or vector objects, what they are. Then we'll be going to what we'll be going through the Illustrator environment, and also we'll be going through some quick tools in Illustrator. It's going to be a real fun class. I'll ensure we do something a little bit practical. It shouldn't seem scary at all. It shouldn't seem scary. If you come back and try it over again, I would introduce you to the tools, introduce you to everything we need to get the every design we need to get going. Do you understand? So this is just a beginner's approach. Do you understand? So when we go deeper into Illustrator, everything you'll be held alongside. You'll be held hand in hand to through this amazing journey. So let's get started. Now, what is raster? What is a vector image? Now, raster images are used based on pixelation. They are used based on calculations of your screen. Do you understand? Let me go straightly or straight into Illustrator. I'll be doing that, but I'll still bring you back again. I'll bring you back again into the workarounds of Illustrator. So please don't be offended if I'm going back and forth. Now, I'm going to do something quickly. Please just follow me along. So I'm creating this, I'm creating a basic shape. Let me, let me, I really don't like magenta, but it is what it is. I'm just going to use it quickly. I'll increase the stroke quickly. Just follow along. I'm trying to explain what the difference is between raster and vector. So just follow me. I'll export this as an image quickly. I'll save this to desktop so you don't see pictures I have on my laptop. So let me just say test square. Saving it as a JPEG. I can save it as a PNG as well, but let me just save it this way. Alright, so now I'll bring it back. I'll bring it back into um, Illustrator, the document I just created. So this is it. I'm bringing it back to Illustrator. Let's go. So now you will notice as I zoom into it, okay, it still looks very crisp and clean. Give me a moment. Okay, now if, as you notice, as I'm zooming into it, sorry, my mouse is trying to play tricks with me. Now if you notice as I'm zooming into it, it looks kind of pixelated. Do you understand? Normally this should be a sharp line. Now this is the raster image. Let me quickly go into this one. Now notice as I'm going through this one, do you see how sharp and how crisp it is? There's no extension of the color or extension of the what they call it, the pixels, the pictures and all. Now why is this? This is a vector image. Now it's based on mathematical calculations. It's not based on pixels. So now if you notice, there are things when you go deep into your phone, there are things like DPI, things like that that talks about number of screens or number of pixels on your screens. Do you understand? In the olden days, or the earlier days, the kind of phones that were produced those days, they had like maybe it's just tiny blocks that are called pixels, tiny blocks you get that form up your entire screen. So based on that's why you have things like maybe resolution of 720p, 720 pixels. Do you understand? 1080p, 4K resolution, 4000, 4000 pixels on your screen. Do you understand? So this your large screen, your devices, anything, your gadgets, they are made up of pixels. Do you understand? So now what then happens is when you save a picture and you're trying to use it as on your Illustrator or anything, what happens, it's rendered as a raster image. So now it's not calculated based on mathematical calculation like points and lines. It's calculated using pixels. So for example, I'll show you a pixelated version on how this image would have been is calculated. So if you notice, let's do a circle instead. Let's do a circle quickly. Now this is how a circle would be when I bring it back. Sorry if my spelling of circle is terrible. I'm just quickly trying to type so I don't waste. Now come back and look at this. Are you noticing can you see the pixels are like blocks? Do you understand? When you zoom out, what are you seeing? You're seeing a full circle. Like everything looks like you basically might not even be able to differentiate between the two of them. Do you understand? But once you then start zooming inside, do you understand? You then notice that that circle is made up of pixels, each block. Do you understand? So those blocks are trying to fill up those spaces. Are you seeing the blocks? You understand? So the one that is at the extreme edge, can you notice the tint? When you start going down into the hue, like the original color, that's what you're seeing now. So you notice it's very, very pixelated. So you can use raster or pixel. So each of these blocks are forming a part of that image. You understand? But if you come straight into this vector image, everything, give me a moment, everything, do you see? Everything is sharp, crisp, and clear because it's all done with mathematical calculations. So while this image on the right is formed with blocks, do you understand? This one can go through the blocks. That is why vector. That is one major difference between a vector and raster image. So now, there are different ways you can use this. Do you understand? Once maybe when you're creating a logo and it will be used in various places. Do you understand? Maybe you need it on a large print and you need it on a small print. Do you understand? You need to ensure it's in a good quality. So it's always advisable that when you're sending maybe a logo or an illustration, for example, that you don't know the use case yet, you usually would send it as a vector image. Do you understand? So the quality is retained. The major thing is the quality being retained. Do you understand? So even if you're using Photoshop, you're using Illustrator, as far as you're retaining the quality of whatever means you're using it, then you're good to go. You understand? There might be different use cases based on the complexity of the illustration you're trying to achieve as well. You might need to use Photoshop rather than Illustrator. You might be able to achieve that same result with Illustrator, but the thing is the time it takes to achieve or time it takes to accomplish things like that. Do you understand? So now we're going to get started. Sorry, I just jumped straight into Illustrator, but I'm going out back. I'm not going to save this. So now, this is Illustrator 2019, just in case. CC 2019. I think one major thing I should point out is I will advise you to get a mouse or use a mouse while using Illustrator or Photoshop. You can use your trackpad, but when you go to a point of when you get to a point of how do I put it? When you get to a point of being critical or being efficient, being sure on the calls you're making, being sure on the focal points, everything, you need to ensure that like everything is smooth, everything is easy. But once you're using your trackpad and you're adjusting your finger, you start getting cramps on your hand, like pains, and you may not even be able to get that same shape you actually want. But it's easier when you're using your mouse because everything is going smoothly. I personally use a digital tab, a display tab rather. It's easier because it just feels like it's my hand that is doing the magic. So, of course, it's my hand though, but you get my point. So I would advise you either use a mouse or you use a display tab, or if you're a big boy, you're using your iPad and so you're with your drawing pen, you're all good to go. You have Illustrator comes for various devices as the need may be. So now this is an introductory class to Illustrator. So what you're seeing here, once you launch the Illustrator app, you get to see this welcome to Illustrator straight up. Do you understand? So now the first thing it prompts you to do is to either, you can see a wider option here to create a new or a custom file. Now these are some presets. Do you understand? These are some presets that come with A4, your postcard. These are the sizes. It comes with web. This web large 1920 by 1080p is one of the widely used dimensions. So when you're designing, so now it's mainly used in presentations like PowerPoint presentation. That's the usual size you see, 1920 by 1080. Also your Instagram stories. Funny thing, your Instagram stories as well. It uses 1920 by 1080. Just flip it. You understand? 1920, that's the width. 1080 is the height. You understand? So the first one on the left is usually the width. Then the one on the right side is usually the height. So now with that, if you reverse it, like if you switch it over, do you understand? That's your Instagram story size. So you see 1920 by 1080 is like widely used. And 1080 by 1080 size, that pixel size is used for your Instagram posts. Do you understand? So what do they call it? You can also create a custom size. So now basically before you start an Illustrator file, you cannot do without creating an artboard. Now an artboard is where your design is done. Do you understand? And you can it's not like you can use the entire canvas of Illustrator when you get started to design anything you want. But when you want to start printing or once you want to start exporting your designs, do you understand? You have to use an artboard. You get it keeps things constrained. It keeps things in the proper dimensions as required. Now you can from here. These are some basic files, like I said. Also at the bottom you will see recent. So now these are some of the files I've worked on. Do you understand? So you can filter through them, you can change the perspective. So if you want to see maybe a preview of the file you've been working on before you maybe you close the Illustrator, you can see them here. So these are your recent files. You can also from here open files you've worked on. Just go to your folder to create the to select them. But today we'll be going with the what? We'll be going with creating a new document. So now let's create a new document. So now how do I put this? First, let's create a new document. Now creating a new document creates a pop-up. You can, from here, you can see a much more wider, what they call it, artboard size. Here, you can see the 1920 by 1080. This is the common web view. And this is for print. You can see A4. You notice also you start noticing things like the dimensions. Do you understand? You have for film and video, you have for art and illustration. Also, if you've created a custom artboard, you can save it, and the saved ones, you will see them here. So the recent ones are what you're seeing here. These are the recent ones, so these are the dimensions I usually would work on a normal day. Yeah, so now let's create a 1080 by 1080p. So like I said, this is like to retain a good quality you're just telling Illustrator that, okay, I want to use 1080 pixels for this entire project. So that's like a level of quality. So if you're using like maybe 320 by 320, you know the quality will be a bit lower. So now this is your dimension here, or this thing, your measurement rules. So you can either use pixels or you can use centimeters, millimeters, inches. So usually when you want to print banners and things like that, you either want to use inches. It's easier to calculate that way. But for now, things like bleed, I don't know if I want to go into all of these details. So this is some of this information are used when you're printing. So bleed is like the space around that artboard or around your document that you don't want, what they call it, you don't want information that you're designing to offshoot out. I don't know if you understand that, but bleed, once you create a bleed, once you're printing the document or you're sending it to your printer, the print document will have that bleed section. So it will show that, okay, this is the full size of the document, but this part, when you're maybe cutting if it's maybe a wedding invitation now, maybe when you're cutting this document, don't cut to this part. So now the bleed is like the extra space in your document that information from your main document wouldn't get into. Hopefully you understand what I just said. In the advanced option, you have your color mode, you have your raster effect. So raster effect is when you're when you're exporting as an object, like as an image, JPEG, TIFF, and the rest. You understand the quality, which is what you're seeing, pixels per inch. That is what it means here. Hopefully I got that right. If I didn't, please you can correct me. Are we still following? Are you still following me? Please, if you're following me, you can respond with an emoji again. I'm asking for an emoji specifically because of things like emojis. The reason why I asked, or why I've been saying you should respond with emojis is most of these emojis you get to see are all created on Illustrator. You understand? Maybe another vector editing tool or a vector creation tool, but most of these emojis you get to use, you get to see, they are all created on Illustrator. So now, we are not going to be creating emojis in this class though. I'm sure you can watch a YouTube video and you would see emojis, how to create emojis and all. So now let's go to, what do you call it? Let's go into creating a document. Like I said, I'm using a 1080 by 1080 pixels. Now let's jump into it. So now this is, like I said, the entire canvas. You remember I talked about canvas. Oh, thanks for the emojis. Thanks for the emojis. Yeah, so these emojis can be created on Illustrator quickly or easily. Let me quickly show you an example since I believe everybody is excited for that. So quickly, I create a circle. I paint it yellow. Sorry. Let me create a smile. So I love using the pen tool. So I know it's a bit easier using other tools, but I basically love the pen tool. So please forgive me if this is coming to so basically when we get to the design classes or introduction to illustration, do you understand? Um, you get to see me use this more. So basically, we'll be shared into not like we'll be shared, but we'll be having classes where one person is using a pen tool, the other person is using just shapes. Do you understand? So now this is for you to get the best of both worlds. So quickly, I know it doesn't look, it's not like the normal emoji you would want to use, but quickly, that was creating an emoji in 1 minute, or maybe 30 seconds. All right, so let's get started. So like I said, this entire place is your canvas where you can work on. This gray area is where you can work on. You cannot work outside this bounding box. You understand? And what this entire thing, once you save this as an Illustrator file, it's called your document, your Illustrator document. Everything in this canvas. Do you understand? Um, then this white thing here, this white box you're seeing here is your artboard. So now there's this option here. You see this thing, this tool here. So let me introduce you to the panels. So now this top here is what you call your control panel. This top area is your control panel. It may look a bit different if you're using a Windows machine, but those of you using a Mac, it might look similar. So now this extension, this area here is where you would see your extensions, you would see your layers, things that are related to your workspace. Do you understand? You can customize it to your feel in the in later classes. Now this is your artboard, and on this left part is your tool menu. Now your tool menu contains almost everything you will get to use on Illustrator. Do you understand? From erasers to the pen tool, to your shapes, to colors, to your mesh tool, to strokes, things like that. You understand? It's going to be a really wild ride. It's going to contain your typography tools, everything. You understand? So this is your tool menu. Now, the top here is called your control menu. Why is it called your control menu? Just for significance sake, or for you to understand why it's called that. Any of these tools you create here, you can use the tools at this top here or the options at this top here to control them. Do you understand? So now controls, things that control your Illustrator itself, your Illustrator software, preferences, things like that. So if you come to your file menu, you can control how your things are saved. You can control your document setup. So basically I created this new document and I want to change some things. Do you understand? I can click on document setup and I can come back here, do you understand, to edit the artboard, change things like, do you understand, the dimension. If I don't want it to be 1080 by 1080 anymore, you understand, I'll show you a quick tool to change that too. So if you come back to your tool menu, you will see this button here called the artboard tool. You can use it to move your artboard, change the size. So if I want to change it to 2000, do you understand, I can do everything with that artboard tool. But let's go in progression. So you have your control menu, things like your edit. So like edit is usually for your pasting, your copy and paste, and some preferences. Do you understand? Also there's this button here. You can save your document. You can save as. Saving as, like you want to, that same document, you want to save it as a different document. Do you understand? That, like maybe you created it as an Illustrator file. You want to save it as a different file. That same file, you're changing its format. Maybe you're changing it from an Illustrator file to a PDF. You understand? Then you save a copy. That means you're duplicating this current document you have. You're duplicating this current document, but you're saving it in a different format or that same format. Do you understand? Search Adobe Stock is Adobe Stock's website, the one that has the images and all. It takes you to the Adobe Stock's website. There are different things like scripts. Later on, you will start realizing that there are things you need outside Photoshop, outside Illustrator. Things like maybe creating a specific kind of shape, maybe exporting different files. Maybe you've created a logo, for example, and you want to export just the logo mark, just the typography, just the logo type, both of them in different colors. You've arranged all of them. You understand? Now you don't want the stress of saving them one by one. You can maybe use a script to save that once and all. Then there's something else called your document mode. So now you remember when I was taking colors, I was talking about RGB and CMYK. So here you can do things related to, you can change your color mode. So maybe you're creating an illustration, you're creating a file for the web, digital medium. You use the RGB color mode. Then if you're saving for print, you understand, you use the what they call it, the CMYK. So quickly, this is your tool menu. You can create shapes. So now I'm going to show you one quick reason why the difference between RGB and CMYK. So now let me take a shape. I create a circle quickly. So now this is yellow. Okay, so that was fast. Okay, this is yellow. Now this is in RGB mode. Notice this is in RGB mode. So now let me change the document color mode to CMYK. Okay, sorry. Let me use a much more brighter color. I'm trying to test something out. If it doesn't work, then that's fine. You get to see now, do you notice the color? Notice how the color changes in CMYK. Do you understand? CMYK, the color looks a whole lot different. You understand? So basically, this is why I tell you there's a difference between creating in RGB mode and CMYK. The color, you have to be very cautious of that. Do you understand? So now, if I switch back to RGB, my color has gone bad, but I can easily come back here and change it to what I want. Do you understand? So know the difference between CMYK and RGB. Now at this part, you have other extension tools. These extension tools are coming out from your window menu. Your window menu has all these buttons like align. So if I bring up this align button, this align tool from the menu button here. Now this align, from this align to, this is your artboard. So you can choose to align it to the artboard. Let me show you what that means. So now let me scale this down a bit. So scaling, if you want to scale proportionally, you hold the command or the control button on your Mac, on your PC, and the shift. Do you understand? And you scale. Sorry, if you want to scale proportionally, left, right, top, bottom, you hold your option key and shift. So now that scales proportionally. You understand? So now if you notice this thing is not well aligned to this artboard, I want it to be in the center of this artboard. What can I do? I first select that, okay, I want it to be aligned to the artboard, not a selection. You see this button here, vertical align center. Vertical align center aligns it to the, let me click on this button, aligns it to the center. Vertical align to the top, vertical align to the bottom. Now I'm taking it to the center. Same with this top here. Vertical align left, right, center. Now do you notice it's at the center? So now if I were to use align selection, you will notice nothing is happening when I'm pressing all these tools. Why? Because it's aligning, it's meant to align selections, not to the artboard. So now this is what I mean. Let me create two documents. Two stuffs like this. So now when I hold these two and I now select vertical align center, do you notice both of them are being aligned to the center? If I used horizontal align center, it's going to put them on each other, which is not what I want. So you have your distribute. You can play around with these tools, basically. Let me jump on to other things. Also, there's something at this top. So now basically, this object affects many things, affects objects. So basically your tools, your text, any object you can put on this artboard, this object affects it. Then this type affects your fonts. So basically maybe you finish creating a document, you used Arial Narrow, and you want to maybe, then later on you're like, oh no, I don't think Arial Narrow works. You then want to switch everywhere Arial Narrow is on this document. You want to switch it to Calibri, for example, or the popular Grotex fonts you get to see nowadays. Do you understand? You use this type tool, so it affects mainly things like your types. So your select tool affects things that are things that are selected. Do you understand? So for example, let me say I want to select. Let me create a different color. So I want to create a different color quickly. So now this select tool, now just notice what happens. I want to select the same, I want to select every object with this color, with this thick blue color here. Just notice what happens. So I go to select same fill color. So I have to select this thing first. I have to select the object first. So I go to select same fill color. Do you notice what happens? It's selecting the same one because it has that same fill color. So now once I come here and I change this color, it affects all of them. So that's one beautiful thing of this select tool. You can select strokes and different things. You have your effect tool. Your effect tool, for example, let me say you want to create a Twitter badge. I'll just create only the badge. I'll not create the tick mark inside. So now you can do things like 3D on your effects. You can do Gaussian blur. You can do round corners, different things. You can distort and you can warp. You can warp objects easily. Now, quickly, we can do this badge using the distort and transform. So now let's go to zigzag. So if I click on this preview button, do you notice what is happening? The shape is changing. So now I can say, okay, I want something like this. Relative, I make it smooth. Sorry, absolute. So let me reduce the number of ridges. Reduce the size. So basically, instead of having to maybe draw these circles or create these things on your own, they are basic distort and there are lots of tools in Illustrator that can help you do these things easily without having to maybe create them out of the glue or combining geometric shapes to form them. So Illustrator is pretty robust. So now if I click OK, these effects, these changes are set in place. Now the final thing, okay, one more thing is your windows. So if you notice, there are some of all these extensions that you would need. Things like, you remember when I was taking colors, I showed you the area that had tints and shade. So what happens, for example, let's say it's no longer there. Give me a moment. So let's say I remove it. So it's no longer on this my extension panel and I want to bring it back. What do I go? I come back to this place and I see color guide. Do you understand? I can bring it back easily. So now if you're looking for tools and you're not finding them on this part, easy thing to do is to check them here on the windows. You can add these extensions. Do you understand? You can add them, and there are other premium, like more premium extensions. You have the Adobe Stock extension, for example, or like a plugin. So once you add it to this place, once you've installed that plugin or the extension, Adobe Stock, you can get maybe pictures from Adobe Stock sites straight on your Illustrator without having to go through your website. So another thing here, which is why I mentioned in the class as well, it's your what they call it, your this essentials area. So now this place is a workspace for different types of illustrators or different types of users. So now Essentials Classic means essential, like the previous Illustrator versions. Classic, the old ones. So now these ones are for beginners. Me personally, I like it because I can personally use it to customize my space to how I want it. So now if I change to, for example, typography, it will bring essential tools related to typography alone. Do you understand? You see things like the character tab where you can change the size of a font of a typeface. Sorry, quickly. Say pretty. Okay, you should stop following my mouse, please. So now this is where when you head layers say things like kerning, line heights, line spacing. So this is where you will see things like that. This is the tracking, like in between the characters. So once you see me increasing, once I'm increasing it here, it's increasing their tracking. Also this, okay, sorry, I can't do that yet because they are, what they call it, there's no text in it. So once let me say add a different text, you understand? I can come here, this is where you will see the leading, which is like the line height in between them. You understand? So once I reduce or increase it, it affects that. But that's not the major thing. What we are talking about here is once I change this panel here to this, it's only giving me tools related to typography. You understand? When I want to work it, maybe I want to create my own font soon. Um, you can see that there. Maybe you want to trace. For people who are doing illustrations that are just related to just tracing, tracing images. When I want to I'm looking for one. Okay, if you connect, for example, if you connect a display tab to this, or if you're using a touch screen laptop as well, there will be an added tool here called touch. You understand? So that one, it will give you only the basics required for touch. So now, if you even use essentials, essentials will give you a much leaner. Do you notice the control menu? You're not seeing it here anymore. Do you understand? You're not seeing it here anymore. It's giving you a more limited or a lighter version of things to use quickly. So I prefer using Essentials Classic that gives me all the options at once. So now there are things like your layer menu. Um, so now, as a designer, one thing I can leave with you is try to be organized. In all your doings, try to be organized. Do you understand? So in your layers menu, when you're creating illustrations, maybe you create the head of your character that has the eyes and everything. You layer them properly in your layers menu. You understand? You can add different layers. For example, I work here, I say, okay, this is the head of my character. I come here, this is the body. Or let me say torso. This is the torso, things like that. Okay, yeah, let me just say torso. If I double click on it, it can show me the a more wider option. Now this color here is meant to show you that, okay, indicates the layer you're working on. You understand? So now, yeah. So now once I change that color and I click OK, so now if I'm on this layer, once I select anything on this layer, notice the color of this layer, it's blue. But let me copy and paste into a new layer. Now, do you notice the selections around it is green instead? So if I create another layer and double click again, I change it to maybe leg. Now, this is not the actual leg, mind you. When we go to character illustrations, you see more of that there. You understand? You notice the color is pink, and if I paste a new document here, you notice the selection. So these color cues you get, they help you differentiate layers you're working on. You understand? So it's very important. Layers are there for you to be organized. You have different tools. You have your alignment. You have your shape modes. So basically, I would have loved to take a very, very basic illustration, like creating. Let me quickly open it. Let me open my recent file. So if you come to your file, I was selecting something else. My recent file, coin and strategy. I would have loved for us to create something like this. Trust me, it's not complex at all. Very, very basic. Very, very basic, but hopefully we'll be going into introduction to Illustrator tomorrow. We'll be going into, there are some fonts that show on other people's, but don't show on my own Illustrator. That's because you've not installed it, Banky. So basically, if you've installed it, once you start typing on Illustrator and you're looking for the font, you should see it on this your character menu. It should bring everything up. Grotesque and all. If it's not there, you've not installed it on your PC. So I would suggest you install that. If there are any questions, I'd love to entertain maybe 2 or 3 questions before leaving or before calling it quits for today. But tomorrow we'll be going straight into all these tools. Going straight into each and every one of these tools here. I mean the ones that are related to you. We'll be going through some basic short commands and short keys. You understand? And we'll be starting with this illustration. So now one thing I love with Illustrator or illustration is the fact that you can create very basic illustrations. What just gives life to illustration is your perspective. Do you understand? You don't have to create something very, very complex before people appreciate it. It can be the perspective you're drawing from. Do you understand? So basically, for example, this illustration you're seeing here, this is a pie chart and coins floating. So now basically you would have, how do I put it? Maybe you would have just drawn a circle, put your pie chart, draw coins and put naira or put dollar on it. And that's everything about it. But one beautiful thing is you can create perspectives. Now you see, now as you're seeing it, it looks as if it's floating. You understand? It seems as if it's floating. There are glitters around. It's shining. Maybe there's a part. Notice the black parts are shiny. You understand? So you can give perspective to your illustrations. You understand? It's only limited by your imagination. It doesn't have to be very, very complex before you appreciate it or appreciate yourself. You understand? So um, yeah. So if you have any questions, I would like to take questions before before we jump. Oh wow, I can see great. I can see great on the comment section. Thanks, great. Um, Thanks for helping out. Sometimes I get it's very very complicated using and trying to explain alt key on the Mac and I'll be option key on the Mac, alt key on the PC. Um, Although I've tasted both worlds, it's still very complex, still transitioning. Okay, I'll take it that there are no questions. Um, from tomorrow, um, okay, can you do all of this on a mobile? My guy. Okay, you can do, there's there's Illustrator on your mobile phone though. There's Illustrator for mobile, but it is very, very limited. It is limited. Like I showed you, when I showed you the essentials panel and all on your essentials classic and automations, do you understand? You could see that it was showing you things related to each of them. It's same thing with your mobile. It may give you just shape tools, just few shape tools. Maybe you should be able to do maybe something like this illustration on your mobile, I think, creating shape tools. But like I said, it's really limited. But you can't do all of this. Like even we people using Illustrator on a PC, you get to see memes on how Illustrator is hanging up on people's laptop or how people's laptop are freezing. Like a laptop with so much RAM and all, talk less of your phone will not be able to carry such computing power. So it's very, very limited. Um, if there are no more questions, I think I'll just give people two extra minutes. So basically, introduction to Illustrator tomorrow. We'll be talking about focal points. We'll be talking about what they call it. We'll be talking about focal points, shades. We'll be talking about lights. Talking about perspective. I'm very very big on perspective. You understand? You can miss. You can. I will not say you should miss everything though, but you can miss. You can miss the other points, but perspective gives life to your illustrations. You understand? You can create somebody who is smiling at a butterfly. Do you understand how the person is smiling, how the person's hand is reaching out to the person can just be smiling to a butterfly, but you can then choose to put a hand, do you understand, with what do you call it, with peas on his hand, you understand, very basic, and the bird maybe flapping its wing, do you understand, in response to the guy's smile. For example, that gives a lot of perspective to your illustration. So one thing I would advise you is giving your illustrations perspective, giving them emotions that when people see them, they feel things. Okay, and this is one thing I love to say. If we've not done it in any of this class, we're sorry, but something I've always loved to say for a while now. Please like and subscribe. Like and subscribe to this channel. Really appreciate you joining us for class today. Hopefully tomorrow when we start introduction to illustration, you get more exposed to these tools. Major difference between Photoshop and Illustrator and examples of projects to use for each. All right. So quickly, I can give you two samples. Do I open Dribble or not? No, I don't want to. So now the difference between Photoshop and Illustrator, like I said. One thing with Photoshop is a raster graphics tool, like I said. Illustrator, you can save your files as SVG. So just the same way, instead of saving it as an image, your picture comes out with increased quality and a low file size. So now an example of projects you can use is, for example, you want to use it. You want to create a basic design. You understand, something that will be used on a website. Now, using it on the website, you know, one thing that affects your website speed is the size of the images on it. So now maybe when you create your illustration, instead of saving it as a PNG, you're saving it as SVG. Sometimes SVG files are usually like 14 kilobytes. So imagine 14 kilobytes as opposed to a PNG of that illustration that will be like 400 kilobytes. Do you see our saving size already? So now that's one way you can use Illustrator for. Then for Photoshop, an example of a project is, for example, a painting. There are extreme paintings that like Illustrator cannot cover. You understand? When you start blending skin tones, you understand? Maybe you want to create a more in-depth art. You want to create a more in-depth art with a face. Maybe the face has blushes. You understand? Some parts have shades under the eyelids and all, and you have to blend them to the skin. You understand? You have to use Photoshop for that, for paintings, like paintings and all. But these paintings now, they cannot be saved as an SVG file. They cannot be saved as vector files. They can only be saved as image files. Hopefully that gives you more perspective. The pen tool is my Achilles heel. Yeah, don't worry. You will conquer the pen tool. We all will conquer. We are still conquering it. The pen tool usually when you cut it down and you don't practice for a long time, it will come back 10 times stronger. We are not using Illustrator for illustration alone. Although for this class we are using Illustrator for illustration. You can use Illustrator for flyers, for iconography, for so much more. You can even use Illustrator for 3D design. No, not for a complex 3D design. So don't go too far. Don't think too far. You can use it for things that are a bit complex like that. Thanks also, Joshua. Yeah, perspective gives life to your illustrations. Yeah, we would see what we can do tomorrow. Thank you for joining class today. We appreciate you. Do have a nice day. Also, happy Good Friday to everyone. Once again, like and subscribe. It's very, very essential to like and subscribe. Thank you. Peace out. Thank you. One more. People sitting here need fun.